Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas. John Flynn here from Flynn Real Estate, serving Southern Ontario, based out of the Niagara region. Thank you once again for tuning in. And of course, it wouldn't be Christmas without a Christmas fire. And our latest fire comes from Bath, Ontario. Loyalist fire crews battle Christmas morning fire in Bath. Firefighter crews from Loyalist Fire battled a structure fire that destroyed multiple residential properties under construction in a new Bath, Ontario subdivision on the morning of Christmas Day 2023. So this is becoming a weekly occurrence lately. Let me add it to the list again. Here we are at the top, Bath, Ontario. It doesn't say how many homes were in the fire, but it did say multiple residential properties that were under construction. And of course, it is an early morning fire, 4:32 a.m. on the 25th of December, and it is under investigation, the cause of that fire. So, wow, I still can't believe these fires are still raging. It seems like they're happening more and more. But again, we're going to keep reporting on them, keep an eye on them, and keep adding to the list. Next up is the Housing Decelerator Fund, or should I say Accelerator Fund? I think I'm calling it the Decelerator because it seems that the housing starts and construction is decelerating these days, but we'll get into that in a minute. So here is the latest update to the Housing Accelerator Fund. And last time I left off there with the black line at London, we've now added Mississauga, Burnaby, Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, which is a record, I think, federal incentive or subsidy for housing in any city in Canada, almost $500 million, 471 million. Winnipeg, Moncton, Richmond Hill, and Kitchener. Now, the reports say there's 16 cities involved. I have 15 here. So if you see any that weren't included on this list, there's one actually, supposedly, let me know and I will add it to it. I searched, I couldn't find the 16th, but maybe they were mistaken. But yeah, we'll figure that out. So we're at a total of 44,665 residential units promised within 3 years. Of course, they're promising more over a 10-year period, but in this agreement right now, they're all 3-year agreements, and there's a total just over 45 or 44,500 units. And so far, there's been a total of $1.632 billion. So not even half the fund has been used yet, and that's a total of, or an average of, $36,543 per unit. Now, again, these are all social kind of style units or density units, multiplexes, apartments, things like that, housing around transportation and train stations. These are not single family homes for people to purchase. None of those have been announced, but regardless, more housing supply is good. But that brings me to the next question. Is there really more housing supply? And it doesn't look like it. Even with these new units promised by these cities with the help of the federal government, we're not having an increase in starts or completions. Now, there's a couple articles here. The one I'm just going to show you the title, and the other one I'm going to read through and look at a little bit of data there just to kind of sum it up to see where we're at. So this is from Reuters. Canadian housing starts dive as higher rates bite. And that was from December 15th. Pretty much the same article or the similar topic here based on the same data from the CBC. Annual pace of housing starts in Canada down 22% in November, says CMHC. Crisis looming as need grows while starts steadily decline, says economist. So we have all these announcements from the federal government, but housing starts are down. And of course, most, or I don't think any of these developments or announcements have been started. I have to check into the first one in London, Ontario, but these are promises that they're going to create these units. And but yeah, we'll see how that affects the starts. But again, their goal is 100,000 units over 3 years, so 33,000 units a year. And is that going to offset how much the housing completions or starts will be down? Yet to be seen, but the early numbers look like it's a break-even situation at best. So back to this article from the CBC, we're seeing housing starts decline at a time where we have record population growth. So this is going to cause all kinds of tensions where we have more and more people chasing, unfortunately, fewer homes, Moffat said. The CMHC tells us that we need to over double housing starts over the next 7 to 8 years, and we're not even keeping pace, Moffat said. We're seeing decreases. And as long as the decline continues, the worse the crisis is going to get. So, not a very good situation there. As he said, the longer this goes on, the worse this crisis gets. And again, this is not a simple solution. This is not a one-step solution where you're just going to create a housing accelerator fund. That's just a little bit of help, but we need more affordable housing. But I'm going to get into that now in just a second. But let's look at the CMHC data to see what that shows us over the last number of years. So the first chart here, this is from CMHC. This goes back to 2000. This is CMHC housing starts for the first 3 quarters of every year. Now, I use the first 3 quarters because obviously we can't compare to 2023 for the 4 quarters. We're not done yet. So I'm using the first 3 quarters in each year. And you can see we're headed down right now. 2023 is the end of the chart there on the right. We peaked in 2021, and our starts are declining for the first 3 quarters of each year right now. Looking back towards 2005 there, as you approach 2007 and 2008, the recession, the great financial crisis happened. And of course, housing starts really dropped dramatically for those first 3 quarters. So it's safe to say as the economy declines and recessions start happening, housing starts will decline. So we're in for further declines of housing starts. Maybe the government can keep us at a break-even point, like I previously just stated, but it doesn't look like even that's going to happen. We probably will have less housing starts, even though the demand is much higher. But again, demand does not dictate housing starts. Affordability dictates housing starts. But again, we'll get into that in a second also. Now let's look at housing completions. So this is, again, CMHC data from StatsCan, housing completions, quarterly housing completions back to 1970. And what the scary thing here is we have actually higher housing completions back in the 70s than we do today, and our population is much higher. Looking at this population chart here from Statista, you can see like the population has been steadily increasing. From 1970, we're at around 21 million. This chart goes to 2020, where we're just over 37.5. We all know we're at 40 million now. So the population has almost doubled since 1970. Now, again, we're looking back at this CMHC housing completions, the quarterly chart here, you can see how low, like per capita, this chart would be the opposite of the population. So housing completions per capita, I probably will do that at one point, but it would be on a severe decline while population's increasing. Now, I did put a trend line in there. This is just a linear trend line, but overall, our completions have dropped. We were around 50,000 per quarter, and now we're down to 45 or 47,000 per quarter. So overall, housing completions declined, population severely increased in that same time frame. Now, as I was looking at this chart, I started brainstorming, and I'm going to leave it on the screen actually while I just say what I have to say here. But I started thinking why is this? It's why aren't we building enough houses? And again, it always comes back to supply and demand. And we've had this argument, and I've always said, okay, it wasn't a supply issue, it was a demand issue, which technically it was. But it all comes down to, as affordability decreases, less people are buying homes. And again, that argument, it doesn't matter how many homes you build. I could build, 1 million homes tomorrow, but if they're all unaffordable, then no one's going to buy them. So, of course, why would people buy homes if people can't afford to buy them? Another analogy would be saying, okay, everybody needs a car, but the only cars that are available to buy, or the cheapest car you can build, is the price of, say, a Porsche or Porsche for you enthusiasts out there. People can't afford them. So it doesn't matter how many you produce. Some people can afford them. Yes, they will still sell. Sales will still happen. People will, stretch to afford them. People that shouldn't afford them will still try to afford them, which is happening also with the housing market. People that should not be affording these homes are actually affording them and trying and stretching and getting cosigners and whatever they have to do, multiple families, whatever the case may be. But again, we're literally selling houses that are priced at the price of supercars when they're actually the quality is actually probably declined. They're like Kias, so we're selling Kias for the price of Porsches, and that's the housing market right now. Now, this is a global phenomenon, but Canada has it worse, right? Not all countries are at the same level with inflation and things like that, but Canada seems like it's been affected worse, and it's because of policies and governments and whatnot that have made worse decisions, say, than other countries when you compare to the U.S. The U.S., they have a housing bubble, but not clearly as bad as ours. Ours is, 1.5 to 2 times worse with our price points compared to income ratios. So anyway, I put this out to the Twitterverse or the X world, whatever you want to call it, to see what people have to say about this. And I put it in some maybe brief, clearer words. And this is what I had to say. And I'm going to read some comments on it. We don't have a housing supply issue. We have an affordability issue. Housing starts and completions are down because families can't buy. Build affordable housing and people will buy. Start with restoring purchasing power to our currency. Of course, I tried to fit a lot into that little post on X, but I wanted to hear what people have to say. And of course, like always, I get some amazing comments. And, this is what I love about these platforms these days is I get to, put something out or other people get to put it out and we get to brainstorm together and listen to people's comments, whether we like them or don't like them. It's good feedback. So here are some of the comments that really stood out to me. From Deny or Denny, I think it's Deny. He says, I can buy all sorts of imported products at fine prices, but looking for a rental property is like applying for a prestigious university. Sounds like a shortage to me. So that's a good point. But the reason you can buy all sorts of goods, imported goods, is because they're affordable. You can buy a TV, 60-inch or 65-inch TV for $500-$600 now, where, that's not the same for housing, right? It's the opposite for housing. That, 1,000 square foot or 1,500 square foot house is more expensive than it used to be. So again, if they built houses cheaply, you could buy them and people would buy even more and they could build even more. But yeah, I think it kind of supports my argument there. You can buy all these imported goods because they are cheap and affordable. From Biljix, I don't even know how to say his name. Sorry there. The lamest type of realtor is the good guy realtor. Housing starts are down because no one wants to build with these expenses. So that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. Nobody can build. Nobody wants to build with these prices and expenses, and they can't even sell the houses. So yeah, why would you build? That's why they're down. From Naren, the entire real estate industry is a Ponzi scheme based on and propped up by the decline of purchasing power. Ponzi must be allowed to collapse in order to restore security to sanity. Unfortunately, politicians gain and regain power only if the Ponzi is allowed to continue. That is sad but true, and I don't know how we're going to break this cycle, but it needs to happen. From Sirap Crypto, you're right, but it's too late. There's no going back. It's default or print to the moon. Hopefully, you're not right, but you could be. From Mathieu Labonte, problem isn't purchasing power, it's building costs. Look back at the post-war housing that Sean Fraser's trying to emulate. Those went up for the equivalent of $134 per square footish. Try getting anyone to build for under $200 today. In my area, it's under $300. Good luck. From Olivier Veer, deflation is usually bad, but Canada needs some for 2024. I fully agree with that and maybe a few more years of it too. From Rosie, we also have an issue of houses sitting empty all week, waiting for the weekend short-term rentals tourists. Airbnb has killed affordability housing for many. Supply is there. Another great point. Thanks, Rosie. From Brian Bacon, you should read this book. You will learn that price affordability is a function of supply and demand. Prices in Canada are the result of excess demand driven by mass immigration. Canada produces approximately half of the housing needed to meet demand with current immigration levels. And the book is Basic Economics, a common sense guide to the economy. So that's a great point. I just think we're past that point, and I think that the government and the economists controlling Canada should have read this book too. We have at root a mass immigration issue that you conveniently don't mention because it benefits your industry, selling out the country for monopoly money. So yeah, we didn't have a mass immigration issue until the last 2 years when the government decided to increase the immigration by, threefold or whatever it was. And of course, now we do have an immigration issue. We didn't have one before that, but now we do. So yeah, definitely a bad policy from the government, in my opinion. They should have kept immigration levels at, near where they were for the last 10 years or the 10-year average. And lastly, from Something Brownstone, but yet it was affordable when interest rates were low. And my reply to that was that wasn't an illusion of affordability, not real affordability. Anyway, that's it for this week. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.